well, one time I'll tell one story. So I was in Denver Airport, which is the one that's nearest to us, and this guy was walking around with a dog who was sniffing absolutely everything. So I walked over to the guy and I said, "Yeah, what's going on with that dog? Is the dog sniffing for drugs?" And the guy cuts me a look and he says, "Buddy, I've got much bigger fish to fry than that."
So, welcome back on the Rumbling Facts podcast, where we dive into uncomfortable truths and stories that sometimes don't even make the headlines. I'm your host, Sam, and today we're going to break down the walls of conventional thinking, and we're bringing you a conversation that's as unpredictable as insightful. Whether it's travel, humor, or life's most unexpected lessons, we're exploring it all. This podcast isn't just about stories, it's about growth, learning, and seeing the world from angles that probably you did not consider before. Today's guest is someone who's made a career out living life to the fullest and sharing his experience with the world. Peter Moore has worn more hats than most of us can count: editor, writer, illustrator, animator, and even TV guest. He appeared in over 2,000 shows and podcasts, and his work spans from everything from Men's Health to NPR. With 3 New York bestseller under his belt, Peter's stories are insightful as much as colorful of his career. Currently, he's a columnist, cartoonist for the Colorado Sun, and a commentator animator for NPR. Peter's work continues to shape the media landscape, from sketching cartoons to talking about his travels. Peter's journey is one that you don't want to miss. Peter, welcome to the Rumbling Facts podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and thanks for that nice warm up. I'm not sure I recognize myself in there, but I'll try to live up to it, man.
There's a couple of people that said something like that. They're like, "Damn, that's a hell of an intro. I'll take it too." So, Peter, you lived like such a dynamic life. If you could describe your journey so far with one unbelievable moment that captures who you are.
Yeah. So when I was the editor of Men's Health magazine, I was about to go out for a run one day at lunch, and I thought, I bet if I wrote the White House an email that Barack Obama would agree to be on the cover of Men's Health. So I, looked up the White House press office, typed what I thought was a very convincing email, and sent it off and went out for my run. When I came back from my run, the White House had already responded and said, "Yeah, when would you like to talk with him?" And on top of all that, in the byplay back and forth, it turned out that they wanted me to talk to Michelle Obama too. So over the course of a couple of weeks in the summer of it must have been 2008, I went to the White House twice.
Wow.
And it was one of the amazing experiences of my life to be sitting in an office in the White House with a couple of staffers there. And then they got a phone call, and I looked down the hallway to my right, and I could see this tall, lanky black man leaning against a desk down this very long hallway. And I realized, like, holy cow, that's the president of the United States. And believe me, it was a very long walk down that hallway when Barack Obama stood up and prepared to shake my hand and welcome me to the White House. It was an amazing moment.
Is it as surreal as we think, like going into that building for the first time?
Yeah, I was, of course, I had an appointment for 3:00 in the afternoon. So I showed up in a park right across from the White House, probably an hour before that, and just sat there staring at that facade and the high fence and the Secret Service guys, and I was thinking, there's no way they're going to let a joker like me through that gate, but they did. So,
Wow.
so I was thinking, okay, this will go down as a life highlight for sure.
Absolutely. There's not a lot of people that are allowed to go to the White House. We need so much requirements to be allowed to show up there. So
Yeah, I'm sure
that's
they did a very careful check on me before I went
for
in.
sure. Is this guy a lunatic?
Yeah, but
No, just a cartoonist, people.
no, well, that was back in my editing days.
Okay.
But I do carry a pocket knife. I was just fishing for it to see if I could pull it out for you. But because a pocket knife is always part of what I carry, when I went through the metal detector in the White House, I still had it in my pocket. And the guy
Wow.
said, "What kind of person are you that you would bring a knife into the White House?" And I had to say, "I'm the kind of person who carries a pocket knife." And really, if I was trying to like murder the president with that knife, it would have been very difficult, especially because Barack Obama is quite an athlete. He would, yeah, he could take care of me if he needed to.
You had so many adventures. Can you share one travel story that is so wild that it's hard to believe it happened?
Yeah, well, here's another one that happened when I was at Men's Health. I was, again, innocently sitting at my desk and the phone rang. I picked it up, said my name. And the guy said, "Yeah, I represent Matt Damon. And he's going to be going to India in a month to visit villages for his charity called water.org. And he wonders if you would like to join him there." And it's like, would I like to go to India with Matt Damon? Let me think about that. Yeah, I would like to do that for sure. So the craziest thing about it was that in order to get my visa in time to go to India, I had to sneak in the back door of the Indian consulate in New York City because I had to get my visa so that 2 days later I could actually fly to India.
Okay, yeah.
And you know what? The line I was in was 300 people long. It was clear I wasn't going to make it to the end. So instead, I went up the back staircase, 8 floors, knocked on the door. Somebody opened it and said, "Yeah." And I said, "Yeah, I have to get in here." So I walked in the door that way, jumped the line of 300 people, got my visa. And a few days later, I was having breakfast with Matt Damon in India. And, we flew around on his private jet. And, again, it's one of those experiences where you say, how did that ever happen that my life would bring me in the direction that I'm flying around with in India with Matt Damon? But it was cool. I did a cover story about it for Men's Health, and it remains one of my awesome memories to this moment.
I can't even imagine you explaining down there that why you need your passport before that. It's like, you guys don't understand. I got Matt Damon. He's inviting me. I got to show up, people. Like, fuck this family. They're going to see their grandma for the last time, but I got to go see.
Yeah, I hope I didn't exclude anyone from seeing their grandma. I like to think that it all came together for me and Matt and for them and their grandma.
What's the most unexpected thing you've learned about yourself while traveling to continents like Europe, Africa, and the States?
Yeah, boy, you really hit me with the big questions here. There's no warm up. You're really
fucking bombs one after another.
Exactly. Fortunately, I have some answers. So the most surprising thing that has happened to me in my career, for a lot of us, COVID was, a career disaster. I had a lot of big freelance jobs going at that time. Magazines were folding left and right. I was actually hired to launch a magazine about cannabis and health, which also folded during the pandemic. So I was, like, what am I going to do now? And I was talking with some friends about it, and they said, well, you've been going on and on about writing a memoir. Why don't you just stop talking about it and do that? So, there wasn't any other kind of writing that I was doing at that time. So I thought, okay, fine. I will begin working on this scrap of a memoir that I had in mind. One thing you should know about me is that in addition to all these life experiences I've had, I keep a journal. I take a journal entry every night, and I've been doing that for 30 or 40 years now. So wow. I have about 6 million words worth of journal entries.
For sure.
It's literally every night since October 12th, 1978. So wow. one of my thoughts was that there was a very important time in my life right after I graduated from college, where I was studying French at the Alliance Française in Paris, and that was also when my journal began. So I thought, well, maybe this time in Europe, when I was kind of coming of age and trying to figure out what my life was going to be all about, maybe that would make a good memoir. So I wrote 100,000 words of that during COVID time. But I've also been a big fan of the novels of Charles Dickens.
Okay.
And one of the cool things about Dickens novels is that every chapter has a frontispiece to it, which is a piece of artwork which sets up the characters and the action that's going to follow. So when I was writing this memoir, I thought, oh well, I love Dickens novels and I love that artwork, and and I have some skill as an artist. I knew that I did back then, so I started doing these sketches to go in the memoir, and pretty soon the memoir turned into a graphic memoir, meaning equal parts drawings and text.
Okay.
And once I started doing that, then all of a sudden it hit me as like, oh, maybe this is what I've been meant to be doing my whole career, is mixing my writing ability with my artistic ability.
Wow.
And that, that was, well, we all know when COVID was. So, this has all been, in the 2020s that I realized I was an artist, realized that I could mix images and words, to good effect. And my career has completely turned around since then, because I've become a cartoonist and an animator in addition to all the writing that I was doing. And, really, it's the most fun I've ever had in my career. And it's a huge surprise to me that anything like this happened, because I was so used to considering myself as a writer and editor rather than as an artist and writer. And
Mm-hmm.
that has been a great turnaround for me.
It really changed everything. COVID, and you took it in stride on the right path. You're like, fuck it, I'm gonna roll with it, and it forced you to get in your book that you weren't sure how to start. You were like, what the hell else am I gonna do? So might as well start that book.
But it's like, it's the thing that we're all trying to do, right? Is to find that thing in our career that we love and that we can make money at the same time.
Yeah.
And so, between the memoir and the illustrations and the cartoons, you can see that my Substack is also something came along early on in this process, where I wanted to experiment with mixing cartoons and drawings with writing. And, I've got nearly 10,000 subscribers for my Substack now. So
Wow.
it's gone from being like just this tiny little thing with basically, my family and friends on it, to having an international reach to it. I mean, I've got people in 45 countries who are following my adventures, which,
Wow.
again, is a huge surprise to me, but it's also so much fun to be hearing from those folks. Whenever I show up for a family reunion, everybody knows absolutely everything that I've been up to, because it turns out they're all reading it too. So
Wow.
it's a way of getting feedback on my work that I never had before. Even when I was working for a giant magazine, Men's Health was in 40 different countries. I never got the same feedback as I did for things I did for Men's Health as I do now for the weekly Substack that I publish, which is, a thrill. And I'm so grateful that I found my way there.
Because I think that magazine, you would only get feedback if it's negative, not positive. So,
Not necessarily. I
no?
mean, Men's Health was a magazine that prided itself on improving the lives of its readers.
Okay.
So the things that I did for Men's Health did impact people positively. I may look healthy to you now, but when I was just over 40 years old, I had I very nearly had a heart attack that could have killed me.
Wow.
And it was just one of those things. I was super fit, but I also had a blockage in my left anterior descending artery in my heart. So
Okay.
that was all a saga in its own right.
Yeah.
But the cool thing about it was that while going through treatment, I realized that this could be very instructive for the readers of Men's Health. And that story actually did get a big response when I wrote about the editor of Men's Health, had a heart problem, and you should look
Wow.
out for your own heart too.
Wow.
So that was a great moment for me in my career, and also really helpful to a lot of Men's Health readers. but it's not the same as like, so when I was working for Men's Health, I was mostly an editor. I wasn't writing articles all the time. Now I publish every week, and I don't have to wait for somebody to, like some stupid
Confirm it.
editor to tell me it's okay or to approve my story idea. It's what I want to do. It's driven entirely by me, and the response has been terrific. So,
And
you know,
I'm sure talk about your story about your heart problem literally in the magazine. Well, instead of them seeing just the cartoonist, well, they see the human behind it, and I think that really captures a lot of people.
yeah, well, I wasn't even a cartoonist then. It was, the cartooning thing has just cropped up in the last several years.
Okay, yeah.
But back then I mean, I was a good writer. I knew that. And I was editing a very large magazine. So I knew I was good at that too. But there was this whole untapped side of me, which is, I'm not on here just to like, oh, aren't I special because I'm an artist now? It's more what I'm hoping that the people who are watching this are saying, hey, what untapped skills do I have that I could explore?
Exactly.
What adventures are ahead of me that I haven't dared to even dream about, but I can go after now? And those are the things I feel super privileged in my life to. I've not only had the dreams, I've managed to find ways to pursue them. And I really hope that for the people who are watching this, that they will look around them and say, hey, what adventure have I always wanted to have that I haven't had yet? And how am I going to work that out? That's a great question for anyone to ask themselves.
Absolutely, man. That is so true. That's why I have that sign right here. Find something that you would die for and live for every day, no matter if you're doing it free at the beginning. But at a certain point, maybe you can get paid for it. Like I wasn't expecting to get millions when I was starting to release my music in January last year, and technically I just made $300 in a year, and that's 200,000 listens, people. And it's like you can't expect to get rich from the day to next, but at least going to your passions every day and taking that step is just those first steps. A lot of people are so scared of getting out their fucking comfort zone and trying something new and really pushing. Go tell that boss that you want that raise. Go try those things. But a lot of people are so just on pause, just scared of. But life is short, like you realize, and we gotta appreciate our life that we have.
I also think that, people don't give themselves permission to do what they love. It's like, if you love it, it must be like over in the corner and you're not allowed to do it. You're not worthy to do that thing. In the beginning, especially when I was, taking a bunch of art and drawing classes, I was always like, apologizing for my work or saying, this drawing isn't very good, but I like this part of it, and not feeling like I was entitled to do the work that I loved. At a certain point, it was just like, it seems like fuck it is one of your favorite things to say. And I finally said, fuck it, I'm going to do this because I love it. And it makes me feel good when I do it. And burrowing down into it, into that thing that you love, that you're self-motivated for, that, you don't even need to be paid the $1 million to do it. It makes you feel like $1 million to
Absolutely.
do that thing. You recording your music, me with my artwork, me with my memoir and mixing it with, with the drawings that I did. All those things are tremendously satisfying to me. And, I keep up my freelance work too. That's not all I'm doing. But I find that my freelance work can subsidize the more adventurous work that I'm doing. And who knows? I'm hopeful someday that memoir will sell. Graphic novels and memoirs are a big aspect of publishing these days. I'm hoping that my passion is leading me in a direction that eventually will mean that I'm getting paid for it. But getting paid for it isn't even the key thing. The key thing is I discovered what I loved and started doing it. And I wish that for everybody who's watching this.
Absolutely, and I took 21 years before releasing my music for the first time because exactly that we put a restraint on ourselves, like, oh, we're not worth it, we're not, it's not perfect enough or whatever. But when you start doing it, like releasing, like I did for the first time, like right after I released the first one, January 2nd, I told my friend, my producer, I'm like, oh man, we gotta release another one like in 3 weeks. I feel like something else, and then you finish this one and you want to get on the other project, and it's a ball that just fucking starts, and inside you as well, the gratification of achieving those little goals and moving forward is those big steps that we need to take.
Yeah, and the other thing that I think people get hung up on is, they're waiting for the muse to strike, or they're waiting to be inspired. For me, the way I work is I'll have a little scrap of an idea and then I'll start working on it. And it's while I'm doing the work that the best ideas come to me. You're probably the same thing in the studio.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, we need to lay this track underneath here, or I just came up with these great lyrics that I want to put in there, or however you do your work. It's like when you're doing the work, that's when the inspiration comes. But the first thing is to start doing it, and then let yourself become like overwhelmed with that, and let the ball start rolling. And once it's got its own momentum, it's amazing the stuff that can pop into your brain, pop out of your fingers, pop onto a soundtrack. All that stuff is a thrill, and you can't do it unless you are doing it. You need to put aside your doubts, put aside your questions, start doing the work, and then the work starts doing you in a certain sense.
Absolutely. And most books I read to fight my procrastination, they all said quite the same thing as you just said, like, take 2 minutes. That's it. Don't ask yourself more than that. And during that 2 minutes, well, maybe you can get inspired and move forward. It's always like that. I write songs. Like I tell myself, oh, I'm just going to write for 5 minutes, but then I'm there for 4 hours. And sometimes it's just 2.5 minutes and nothing's working, but it's all good. At a certain point, we just got to push forward.
Are you aware of the concept of flow? Do you know that word?
I think I heard about it, but go ahead.
Yeah. So there's this theorist named I think his name is Konstantin Csikszentmihalyi. He was a Polish guy who was teaching at the University of Chicago, and he wrote a book called Flow. And what the flow state is a creative state that you get yourself into, where your synapses are firing, your inspiration is huge. Time disappears. You're just roaring down the highway of your creative endeavor, whatever it happens to be. And what you were just saying is that you look up after 4 hours, and it's like, where did that afternoon go, or where did that night go, or oh my God, it's 3 o'clock in the morning and I'm working. Those are all symbols of the state of flow. When I feel flow is when I'm drawing or when I'm writing, and time goes away. It's all just a creative process. And, the more flow you can live in life, the more exhilarating it is, the more productive you are, the better your creation is. So we all need to be seeking that state of flow out.
Absolutely. I realize that food tells a story about each place in life. What's the best meal you've ever had, and how did it capture the culture of the destination you were in?
Yeah. So I took an assignment for you're not going to believe this. It was a magazine actually for professional waiters and waitresses. And it's kind of, that was back in the day in the magazine industry when such a thing existed. I guess now it would be a blog post or a newsletter. Anyway, what they wanted me to do was to go to a restaurant at the Dorchester Hotel in London and go out to dinner with an academic man who had studied the social hierarchies of life in restaurants. So it was a crazy experience. This guy was trying to set up the evening at like the fanciest restaurant in London in a way to subvert the social hierarchies of this restaurant. So typically a man would be the host, and he would be guiding his guests through the evening. Well, he had his wife call in and make the reservation. So that was the first thing that upset things. And then from that point onward, all of the evening should have flowed through the person who made the reservation, his wife. But instead, they were asking, this professor, like what the wine choice was, all that. And then when the bill came, I was the one who paid it because I was on expense account for this $1,000 meal that we had that night. So not only was it an amazing meal in one of the most amazing rooms back in the day in London, but I got all this amazing material for the article that I wrote about it. So it was this very rich experience of great food, terrific company, really interesting goings on because we were studying the social hierarchy of the restaurant. So, you could say that working my way through that meal was really a way to ruin a good meal because I was working while I was doing it.
Yeah.
But it remains one of the most singular meals I've ever had in my life.
You've written for the New York, you wrote for 3 of the New York Times bestseller. How does storytelling in books compare to captivating moments in travel or cartoons?
Yeah. So here's the funny thing about that. When I was working as the editor of Men's Health, people kept on coming to me to ask me to write books for them. So what we're really talking about is my career as a ghostwriter.
Yeah,
And the crazy thing about it was that at the time I was working as a ghostwriter, diet books were all the craze, right? So people were looking to experts to find out, how they could lose 15, 20, 30, 40 pounds. Um, I've never weighed more than 150 pounds in my life. I've never been overweight. I have tremendous sympathy for people who do because I know if it's a problem for you, it's a hard one to wrestle with, unless you get the right prescription these days. But so those 3 New York Times bestsellers I wrote were all ghostwritten books, and they were all about how to lose weight, which I've never had to do in my life.
wow.
So that's kind of crazy. And it was one of the reasons why I was looking for some other direction to go in my life because I do want to work on books. I've written books before, I've had success at it, but it hasn't been my story. It's been
That's it.
someone else's story.
Mhm.
So, I have no regrets about that. The books were successful. They helped me pay for my kids' college educations, which, I'm really grateful that I had those assignments, but I never need to write another one because, it's gotten to be about time in my life where I paid attention to what I want to write and what I know and what I need to express rather than what somebody else needs to express for themselves, and that I'm just a vessel to produce that for them.
Yeah, for sure. Being behind a veil when you can be in front because you're quite skilled, might as well be in front. From
Yeah.
working men's health to your current Substack, what's the most challenging story or article you have ever written for you?
Yeah, it was very difficult. I mentioned the article about my heart problem. Um, that was a very difficult one for me to write because I was staring my own mortality in the face. Um, it could have very easily killed me. At the time, my sons were probably 12 and 10, and it was a scary thought for me to think that I might have lost my entire life with them and them with me. So it was a very emotional process to work on that. But it was also super interesting because of my position at Men's Health, there were a lot of people who wanted to talk to me and help me with what my problem was. So
Mhm.
at one point, I was flown out to the Cleveland Clinic in Cleveland, Ohio, obviously, and some of the best heart docs in the world were considering my case. So I was super fortunate because I was the editor of a very big magazine that they wanted to deal with me. So I got this multi-million dollar health care for free because I was writing an article about it. So if anybody was going to guide me in ways that
Yeah.
would ensure that I would spend lots of more time in my life with my wonderful sons and my wonderful wife, that was the place to be, the Cleveland Clinic. So it was equal parts scary and difficult. I actually stood over a heart surgeon's shoulder while he performed a valve repair on a man who would have died had he not had that done. And believe me, when I walked into that operating theater in my scrubs and stepped up on the little stool and looked over this guy's shoulder into an open heart cavity, that was a freaky experience. And I wasn't sure at the moment whether or not I would just like fall over in a faint looking at that, but somehow I managed to maintain consciousness, and it made this amazing scene in the story. So no regrets there.
And I totally understand that that story is probably the hardest one for you because the story of my addiction and the story of my dog
Oh,
that passed away are my two songs that were the hardest to write. Both of them took over 4 years to write, and there's some of my songs I write in like 2 hours and I'm done. These two songs, since they're so personal, you so want to make it like perfect, and perfect is never enough. Almost,
yeah.
it's crazy, and I totally understand you in that.
Hey, well, congratulations on your fight against addiction, and I'm so sorry that your dog passed away. I understand, like that's a deep one when that happens.
For sure, because it's like family for a lot of people.
Sure.
Uh, Cartooning and animating seems like unique ways to capture memories. How has drawing influenced the way you see the world now?
One of the reasons why I began doing it was that in my life at Men's Health magazine and at other magazines I worked for, I spend all day like talking and writing. It's like all of this verbal communication, all of this written communication. And at a certain point, I was just thinking, I wonder if there's something I can do in my life that would just allow me to shut up, just shut up and do the work and pay attention in a different way than I do when I'm yakking all the time. So I started taking art courses because I wanted to take a break from all the writing and just nonstop talking I was doing. And I found that those, it's like the 2 or 3 hours that I'd be in a drawing class, not saying anything to anyone, and looking at the world with a new kind of attention, the kind of attention that an artist pays toward things, was a complete revelation in my life and a wonderful opportunity. So I do a lot of work for Backpacker magazine in the U.S. and I was editor of it for a while, and I pitched them on what's the best 5-ounce addition you can make to your backpack, and the answer, of course, for me was a pencil. And what I wrote the story about was how you interact with nature in a completely different way if you just take the time to sit down on a rock, pull out a piece of paper and a pencil, and attempt to render it on a page. And that the truism there is that unless you really stop to look, you'll never see what's in front of you. And I think in my whole life, I was just sprinting from one place to the next, one experience to the next. And really, those were great times. But the fault in there was that I wasn't paying as close attention as I needed to when I was in beautiful places, interesting places. So the whole the way that the pencil that I bring along with me, the sketch pad that I bring along with me, gives me an excuse to stop and look and really take things in. And it's another reason why I'm so grateful that my art career has taken off, is that I have some more time to experience that delight of slowing down, looking carefully, thinking hard about what I'm seeing, and rendering just the details that capture that scene. And that's been a tremendous gift as well. And it's one that I've only allowed myself to take on in the last few years.
Absolutely. A lot of people nowadays have so much trouble living in the moment. And even you with that fast life, for sure, that taking the time to just sketch what you're feeling, what you're thinking, or your surrounding, probably you appreciate way more the little moments. And especially after your heart problem, uh, those little things in life, we so taken for granted. And when our life is close to the brinks, and then we come back, it's like every moment after, just hearing the birds outside, I appreciate it. And that breath in, that first breath when you go outside and fucking take that nature in for the first time, like just like really tell yourself, this is air I'm taking in. And that moment of you just thinking that, well, it really aligns you more with life and nature, and appreciating those little moments.
Yeah, it's like, as much as I love my iPhone,
For sure.
I get lost in it too, just like everybody does.
For
And,
sure.
like after I've been like going around and checking sports scores and, reading about how my favorite teams are doing, and then like ducking into the news, which is a major headache for me, I realized that I'm really not, it's not living that I'm doing when I'm looking at that phone. It's like I hit pause on my life and I stare at this device.
Exactly. Yeah.
But the device needs to go away. And one of the things that's been interesting is that as my career has developed with artwork, I have gone digital with my artwork. So I do most of my drawing on an iPad now. My professional drawing, the ones that I'm paid for. But that's been a good thing too, because I'm focusing on a device, yes, but I'm using it for a very specific expressive purpose that means a lot to me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like devices and technology are evil. I mean, here we are, we're podcasting right now, so I'm not going to complain about that. You have a very impressive microphone there.
Thanks.
Yeah, but so I'm not saying that tech is evil, but you have to make sure you're using it to enhance your own life rather than, to satisfy some algorithm or to, get a number of likes for some producer who's not you and who's making money off of you because you're giving them the precious gift of your attention span. Your attention is all you've got.
Yeah.
You don't need to surrender that to someone else. Pay attention to what matters to you. And then you never know where that's going to lead to, but at least you'll be living a intentional way, paying homage to the things that are important to you. That's where you need to go with your life. And that's ultimately, I feel, what's going to be satisfying in life.
I forgot who said this, but he said, let's say if aliens would come to Earth today, people, he's like, they would look around and go back down there, and their leader would be like, okay, so what's their leader? Oh, their leader, their God. Oh, it's simple. It's this. They're just all like this, walking in the street. I think if we could take control of those electronics, I think we got it, man. I think it's that simple, and that's crazy because we're in this world now that people are going to say, see example, an amazing musician in person. Well, no, they're actually living behind their own screen, watching the show from their phone. It's like you're there. Can't live the moment, people. Live the moment.
It actually has been one of the cool things I think that has happened in music recently. I'm not sure that every performer would agree with me, but I would say that I listen to a lot of music in my life, and I also happen to live in a part of the world where there are amazing clubs and concert venues. So since my wife and I moved to Colorado 7 years ago, we see so much more live music than we ever did in our old lives. And I feel like I've had so many magic moments, really feeling a connection with performers who I love in venues that are, large, small, it doesn't matter. If you can experience music, live with other people, it's not that it's just like funneling through your headphones. It's more like I'm living the music now with this amazing creative person. And that's been a great aspect of my life too. Now, I don't think I'm ever going to follow you down the road of producing my own music, but I love music and I love performers. And whenever I can, I try to be in their presence so I can really soak up with the energy and the vibe and the ideas that they're putting out.
Absolutely, a live performance is so completely different than it's like paintings. I find it's like you can watch all the paintings you want online there, but literally going to art exhibition and having the painter himself there explaining his painting and everybody it's really I never thought I would love those kinds of stuff. And when I went for the first time, a girl was wanting to bring me there, and I was like, oh boy, this is gonna be a long night just to have sex with her. Actually, I had a great time. I was asking more questions than anybody I saw down there. I was like, I had so many questions about everything, and seeing people that are passionate about why they painted this a particular way. And wow, it's as amazing as the music because it's still art at the end of everything. So we're all artists in our own ways.
And the good news is you probably really impressed the girl you were with.
I did.
Yeah. Okay. See, it shows it's a beautiful thing when you get that reward of being that engaged, inquisitive person who's really, alive to the possibilities. That's the most attractive quality anybody can have. And I'm so glad that your time in the gallery like woke that up in you, because that's a great way of interacting with, with the artwork, with the artist, and downloading some life ideas that can be wonderful for you.
It's like I went to yoga too for a girl, and oh my god, I was like, oh, I don't want to go down there. And during, it was so physical. Like me and my friend were having trouble to follow these girls. I was like, wow, this is impressive. And I'm OCD, and that moment of an hour and a half, I'm not even thinking about nothing else but how much trouble I'm having right there. Nothing else. No bills. No what I need to do later. And normally my mind's rolling 16 different ways, and I was just zoned in. I was like, wow, it's really trying new things, and we learn so much. And that gets to my next question. So you have a huge bucket list probably of destinations, and what are one that you didn't cross off yet that you really want to get off your bucket list?
Wow, I've been all around the world, and I love that. I actually just a couple months ago I crossed off a really big one. I had never been to Istanbul before, and it's just like I can still remember when I was a little kid in elementary school and reading about Constantinople and the crossroads of civilization. Like even as a second grader, I was saying, I'm going to go there someday. And, and finally we made it there, and it was every bit as amazing as I thought it was going to be. Have you been to Istanbul? Do you know it?
No. I just went to the States, and it's because my grandfather was a trucker. So it was like, oh, we're going to Detroit today, so get in the truck.
Yeah, well, Detroit has its own charms. It's not quite Istanbul. But just the whole idea of, I'm born and raised in the US. The whole idea of going to Turkey, being in the middle of, a place that's half in Europe, half in Asia, being able to take a ferry between two continents.
Wow.
I'm a major food guy, as we were talking about. So sampling, the many cuisines of the many cultures that gather together in Istanbul, I think that especially in the States, we have this kind of an insularity. It's a big country. We think that our 315 million people are the most important ones in the world. I personally don't believe that. I am much more of a pluralist, much more of a, I have this feeling that people of all sorts of different cultures have so much to offer and so
Absolutely.
many interesting perspectives on life that I wouldn't get as a kid born in Bridgeport, Connecticut, unless I go out and seek those things. In
Absolutely.
Istanbul, as a crossroads of many civilizations, and as a, one of the world's great cities, was a place I wanted to go to, step back with my, American idiot instincts and learn about how
The
other
culture.
people.
Yeah. Learn about the culture and everything down there. Think it like that again.
Yeah, there I am. I still exist. I'll keep. You can still hear me when my screen goes off, right? Okay, good. Who wants to look at me anyway?
It's all good. You look great for your age. Don't you worry. You worked so many different industry, from the cannabis to fitness. How does one go about successfully reinventing themselves for the second or maybe third career?
It's a great question, and it's so important in people's lives now. When I was in college, being an English major was still a thing. It's not anymore. So I feel really grateful that I got to do that for 4 years, and thank you, Dad, for paying for it. But I've always felt like the thing that was great about the course of studies I had in college was that I was getting ideas from lots of different writers. I took a lot of economics. I took some biology. I took art history. I was an English major, so I read all the best stuff that there has ever been written, or a lot of it anyway. And I always feel like my career since then has been the career equivalent of that education I had in college, meaning it's not so much what that one thing is that you're doing. It's like how well you are able to burrow into it, understand it, appreciate it, seek out the brightest ideas in it. And so I've had a lot of different jobs in my career, but the through line in there, and the thing that's consistent between all of them, was that I was covering a subculture that had a lot to teach me. And the enthusiasm I brought to like learning about the movies. I was the editor of a movie magazine once. I was an editor of a magazine. I was an editor at a magazine about technology in the future. I was an editor at Playboy, which was its own like mind-blowing experience.
Wow.
And then Men's Health, Backpacker, the Cannabis magazine. A lot of different subjects. But the key here was that I fully invested myself in learning those subjects while I was working on those magazines. And it was my ability to study up enthusiastically and throw myself into those, which has been a driving force for my career.
Oh, we so gotta be curious in life, and there's so much to learn. Honestly, I sat down with homeless people just talking about their story and learning stuff, and it's like anybody in life can teach you something, and there's a feeling of gratification and a high that we get from gaining knowledge and acquiring. I tell people we're like Inspector Gadget. You just don't know which gadget you can use yet. So by getting in knowledge, and now you got a scissors here. Now you can do this there. It's you need to gain knowledge because knowledge is power. Because then you choose the direction you want to go, but with your thoughts by taking good here, this there, and yeah. Do you have some do's and don'ts on traveling with cannabis?
I don't want to get the people who are watching this in trouble. But let me just say that I have never had a problem, and I've traveled all around the world. So that isn't to say that the people who watch this podcast, they could very well end up in prison for 20 years, and that would make me feel bad if they did that based on my advice. But you know what? I feel well. One time, I'll tell one story. So I was in Denver Airport, which is the one that's nearest to us. And this guy was walking around with a dog who was sniffing absolutely everything. So I walked over to the guy and I said, "Yeah, what's going on with that dog? Is the dog sniffing for drugs?" And the guy cuts me a look and he says, "Buddy, I've got much bigger fish to fry than that." And this is in Denver, like the capital, the cannabis capital of the
first state to be legal.
Yeah. So you know what? I think everybody has their own tolerance for risk. I worked it out for mine. And, I guess the other thing I would say is cannabis comes in many different forms, and some of them are very easy to conceal in a bag of candy.
Yeah, true that. True that. What's the secret to thriving on a cruise, and is it the right travel option for everyone?
Honestly, I've been on 2 cruises in my life, and and on both of them, people were my age or older. So, I guess there are cruises you could go on, like somebody your age could go on and have a lovely time, and have it be more of a wild experience with DJs and naked hot tubs and all the rest. That hasn't been my experience, and it depends on what you're after. When you're on the road, it's certainly not the least expensive way to travel, but there is a certain beauty to unpacking your suitcase once and seeing all of Alaska like I did on a cruise ship, or cruising from Budapest to Istanbul or near thereabouts, or Bucharest, I guess it was, on a cruise boat. I felt like it was a way to experience the world that made it easy for me to engage with people. And, every time I got off the boat, I felt like I was meeting, the people who live there and downloading a piece of their lives. So, nice. I'm not sure it's for everyone. There are a lot of people who would just as soon be on a party boat in the Caribbean. That isn't the way I chose it. I went to places that I was genuinely interested in. And there are a lot of ways to do that, if you've got some money in your pocket and some time to spend. And I happen to have both of those, so I was lucky enough to do it. But I'm not sure it's for everyone, or maybe not people at your time in life anyway.
What would be the ultimate guide to tell people to make the most out of a destination that they go to?
I always have a book that I read when I'm when I'm going to a destination. Okay. So Orhan Pamuk is a Nobel Prize-winning novelist and memoirist. And before I went to Istanbul, I read his book that was called Istanbul.
Okay.
So I got the full story of his childhood and coming of age as a writer when he was living in Istanbul. But it also gave me a feel for who the people who live in the city are, what its history is. So I'm always combining, a really good book with a really fascinating place to be. And, so I kind of felt like when I was in Istanbul, I was traveling there with a Nobel Prize winner. And that's a good way to do it.
Your Substack is now widely successful. What advice would you have for writers looking to grow their loyal online audience? Because I realize that there's some that are incredible, but that can't get a following.
Yeah, at a certain, okay, at one point I hired a guy who I used to work with in my magazine career, who was the circulation director of Men's Health magazine. Very smart guy, knows a lot about circulation, meaning how to attract an audience for a magazine, whatever, a website, a newsletter. And one thing that he told me was that with publications of any kind, the hard thing is, he was doing a metaphor with gears. And the hard thing is to get the gear to turn around once, meaning to gain enough momentum that people are starting to notice what you're doing. So, for the first, year and a half, I was, struggling along with 300 subscribers. And then I would get to 311 and feel pretty good about that. And then at a certain point, I noticed that the subscribers were coming on not one at a time, but 6 at a time. Then they were coming at 20 at a time, and then 40 at a time, which meant that, whatever algorithm Substack uses, they could see that I was gaining popularity, and that meant that they were pushing it out in places where it wasn't being pushed out before. So I think that's part of it. But also, I realize now that because of the kind of work I do, there are lots of ways that I can share it. So Blue Sky, Instagram, Facebook, even LinkedIn, coming on podcasts like yours. I mean, there are a lot of places that I can reach an audience that hadn't even occurred to me when I started doing my Substack. But the key there was that I was doing something that I love, and people who engaged with it could tell that I loved it. So, 100 times I've had people write to me and say, gosh, Peter, it sure does seem like you're having a lot of fun doing this. And that fun is infectious. If it's fun,
like, I chose this, people. I chose this.
But if I'm having fun doing it, that's going to radiate off of the page.
Absolutely.
So I would say that, you don't do a Substack just to do a Substack. You do a Substack because you have a very specific idea of a Substack that you would like to read yourself. And if it satisfies your needs as a passionate producer, then with any luck, other people are going to be interested in it too. So, that's how I went from, 300 readers to 10,000.
So you never paid no marketing for that?
Oh, sure. I've been active in that too. Yep.
Is it really worth it?
Ask me again in 5 years, I'll tell you. It has been, it has been worth it to me. It's been an investment. I'm making money on it now. I didn't always. And, I'm fortunate to be at a time in my life where, I've had a lot of big jobs and I have money to invest in something that I love. So I have no regrets about that. And, no apologies either, because somehow you have to get the word out there. So there's a website called refined.com that I've been collaborating with on and finding readers, and they've been very helpful. But even the best collaborator isn't going to help you if people look at your newsletter and think that it sucks. Clearly, people have been looking at what I do, engaging with it, subscribing to it, responding to it, and that's as I said, that's just been so gratifying and fun for me.
And like you, me too. At the beginning, like I didn't pay one marketing yet to my music because it's like I'm not making millions yet, like, or I'm not making any sense yet, really. So I'm not gonna start investing $100 a song there. So I'm still waiting on just more time. And like you said, I say it like a ball of snow going down a hill. It starts small, but at a certain point, it's gonna pick up. So we just gotta wait for that moment.
Yeah, I actually wanted to pick up on that because
Yep.
you used the snowball metaphor before. I live in Colorado where there's a lot of snow and there are a lot of avalanches. And you think about how an avalanches start. You've got a pristine side of a mountain with the snow sitting on it. Then one guy tracks across with his skis, and suddenly the snow starts to slide, and pretty soon you have 47 tons of snow going down the side of a mountain. Your initial efforts in whatever your creative endeavor are that first ski along the slope. Once the snow starts to slide, then it gains a momentum of its own. With any luck, you don't die in the avalanche, but
Yeah.
you ride it to someplace new and unexpected and great. So what your viewers want to do is touch off the right avalanche for them and ride it, not get killed by it.
Yeah, and after it's staying constant. Right when you stay constant after that, after it started, oh shit goes well there. And I learned that you pissed in a volcano. So, what
I
was
did.
going through your mind, and did you learn a bigger lesson through that experience?
So I was visiting friends of mine who were serving in the Peace Corps in Congo and in Africa, and when I was with them, we started hearing reports that this volcano had erupted 40 miles from where they were serving in the Peace Corps. So we thought, how many chances in life are we going to have to be on an active volcano?
Exactly.
Let's go down there. So we hopped on a truck down a dirt road, took us all the way, down to the near the site of the volcano. We still had a 5-mile hike to go in there.
Wow.
So we hiked into the volcano, and like we were literally, covered with ash. The flames were like lighting up the clouds overhead, and so we one day we walked in to get close to the volcano so we could really feel the heat, see the lava flowing and all that. But of course we had our coffee that morning for breakfast, and you know what happens when you drink a cup of coffee, you're gonna have to pee. So before we actually climbed up to the top of the volcano, we were standing next to this stream of lava that was going by. We thought we were far enough away from it, but anyway, nature called. So I unzipped and let loose a stream. And, I was watching it. It was, the urine was seeping down into the volcanic ash. I thought, that's weird. It's not puddling. Like a few seconds went by, and then this cloud of steam hit me in the face. It was the steam from my own pee. And it was
Wow.
because, 5-6 feet below the surface, it was molten lava right there.
Yeah.
And it was just like, I think what I learned from that is be careful about how close you get to a volcano. Fortunately, I didn't fall in. No lava splashed on my head and ate a hole in it. But it was, again, one of the most amazing travel experiences of my life.
What's been one of the biggest failures or mistake about your traveling, or something you encountered that you're like, damn, I'm probably not going to do that twice?
Honestly, I think I traveled as an entitled American for way too long in my life, that it was like, yeah, you people are here to entertain me, so let's get it going, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to, being
Trying to
out there.
live the culture. It's
Exactly.
not. That's
Right.
it.
It's like, it's not about me impressing my culture on anybody else. It's more, what can you show me that I never would have expected or enjoyed before? So, it's taken a while in my life for me to come to the enlightenment that I need to be a better traveler. And, I totally get it when, countries decide they're going to ban Western tourists because they just come in and fuck up their countries.
Yeah.
What I want to do is to go into a place, be as respectful and non-disruptive as possible, and engage with people rather than seeing things. And, I'm a big fan of museums. We were talking about that earlier. I go do that too. But it's more the hole in the wall restaurant, the person you encounter on the street. Those are the people who give you legitimate travel experiences, as opposed to, going to Broadway and seeing The Lion King.
Yeah.
It's like that's, I mean, that's entertainment in its own right, but it's not real engagement between people. And that's the mistake I try to avoid making now. When we were on this cruise down the Danube, one of the things that stood out for me was that the people on either side of that river are still living through some very difficult times, and the memory of war is very recent for them. We weren't that far from the border of Turkey and Kiev, Ukraine, when we were there. I was very aware that this region we were traveling through is experiencing war now, had experienced it in the recent past, and that's what I wanted to take from it was, how do you look at that now? How did it affect you? How did it affect your family? Being able to ask those questions and find the people who really want to give you a good answer, that feels like a legitimate travel experience, because it's enlightening you and educating you on how the world actually works, rather than having a nice meal in a restaurant and then staggering back to your hotel room.
Like, did you ever see the movie The Beach with Leonardo DiCaprio?
On the Beach?
No, The Beach by Leonardo DiCaprio.
I'm not sure I ever did.
He gets given a map about a secret island, and he decides to go there and live there. Well, before going, you hear him and narrating a part, and there's fucked up people beside him, and they're like, "Oh, this is the shots we're taking," and they're red, and he's like, "What the hell is this?" They're like, "Oh, it's snake blood." He's like, and you hear him narrate. He's like, when somebody from a different country gives you something to drink or eat, you take it, you swallow it, and you say thank you. Like, live the experience to the highest degree. And another reason I brought this movie in is because you talked about a lot of people like fuck up those places. Well, the movie The Beach was so big because of Leonardo that the place initially that they put it at, well, a lot of people were going there, and it's been banned for people. It's been 4 or 5 years because they've been putting shit everywhere.
Yeah, and I regret that, as a frequent traveler. I'm sorry, I've been a part of that, and I'll admit that. But all we can do in our lives is learn and try to do things differently. And that's what I try to do as a traveler now.
I got 3 more quick one, and that's gonna be it. It's okay?
Sure.
Okay, perfect. From national parks to busting cities, what's your favorite destination of all time, and why does it stand out for you?
Wow, boy, that's a hard one.
That's why it takes 4 or 5 hours to write my questions.
Well, thanks for your care on that. One of the great things that I've ever done was spend time in New Orleans right before the pandemic hit. I was actually there like as the pandemic was blooming. And one of the reasons why I love New Orleans is that it's such a stew of humanity. It's like people from all walks of life, all races. They're bringing their cuisines and their music and their life experience, and you can live through all that. One block to the next, life changes in New Orleans. So it took me a long time to make it there. At a certain point, I had been to Kathmandu in Nepal, but I hadn't been to New Orleans. So I finally made an appointment. I'm kind of like, it's about time I went to New Orleans. And I love the place. I love the food. I love the people. I love the mix of humanity that you run into there. So off the top of my head, that's one of the highlights for sure.
Well, that's where Little Wayne is from. And when the black movement was moving there, they try to put Lil Wayne on TV, saying like, "Oh, you lived through racism," and he's like, "No, ma'am, I did not live racism." And she tries to push him, so he admits that he did, and he's like, "No, well, you don't understand. I shot myself at 11 years old." That's what he tells her, and He's like, and there's officer that ran over him in the house, and there's one white cop that saw him. Is like, hey, there's a 11-year-old boy dying right here. He picked him up and saved Lil Wayne. And he's like, so don't talk to me about racism. I don't say it don't exist, but don't try to put me in your fucking script. And New Orleans, I always wanted to go there because Lil Wayne is one of my idols. And it seems such like a beautiful place. Exactly what you said. A lot of cultures. That's what I saw online as well.
Yeah, a lot of up and down there, and it's a very.
Well, it's like Atlantic City. You can get rich at Atlantic City, or you can leave with nothing.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, well, I hope you make it sometime.
What role does humor play in your life, especially when you're facing challenges or mishaps on your road?
It's been one of the fun things that's happened since I started drawing and cartooning, is that it gives me a filter to put things through. So just before the election in the US, I did a cartoon for the Colorado Sun talking about all the things that won't change in my life because of the election. And they were silly things like the rate at which my hair grows. And it was like, so the point I was trying to make is we're on the verge of a major switchover in the United States, and you better be ready for it. So I filtered that anxiety I had over where the world is going into a cartoon series, which was very popular in the Colorado Sun. So that was fun.
That's what I do with music too. I bring a piece of what I'm living here and try to re-put it so people understand it more. And my insecurities, I pass it through my music as well. You've worked with so many different media formats: writing, drawing, editing, speaking. What's the medium that feels the most authentic to you, and why?
I feel very fortunate to be living in an era when the graphic novel has a graphic memoir. I was just looking. So I've been reading a lot of graphic novels and memoirs recently, and I feel like that combination of words and
drawings.
Pictures and drawings can be super expressive, and each can comment on the other. The first graphic memoir that I ever read was Fun Home by Alison Bechtel. And it tells the story of her upbringing. Fun Home stands for a funeral home. And her father was a mortician, also a closeted gay man. And she's telling the story of what it was like to grow up, not only in a funeral home, but with a father who was wrestling with his identity as a gay man when he had, 3 kids. So when I read that, it was part of my realization was, oh, there's a lot that we can do here if we can combine the words and images in a way that hasn't really been done before. And, obviously comic books have been around for a long time, and I'm not denigrating those, but it feels like the whole graphics world has made a turn in the last 10 years toward you can write a serious piece of literature and have it be illustrated. And, that's my dream right now. I hope that's the path I'm on. But even if I'm not, I'm having a really good time. So what the hell?
So where can everybody find you, your social medias and everything?
Yeah, everything I do, I funnel through petermoore.substack.com. It's on the screen there. I'd love to have some of the people who are watching this check it out. If it's your kind of thing, go ahead and subscribe. You can be a free subscriber, but I especially love my paid subscribers.
For sure. So thank you for coming on this week. It's been a pleasure to have you, and see you guys next week.